Well, folks, headlines read, millions rally across the U.S. in anti-Trump No Kings protest. Then it goes on to say over 8 million people joined over 3,000 peaceful events nationwide to protest what organizers called an unprecedented expansion of executive power under President Trump. This is what the liberal legacy media reports. Do you believe legacy media? Well, stick around. We're going to take a quick journey into this mess and see what I think.
Welcome to another episode of Larry's Rants, Raves, and Reviews! Now, it's the moment that you have all been waiting for. Here comes the man, the myth, the legend, my papa! Here's Larry!
Well, folks, again, legacy media reports millions. You know, they're talking about over 8 million people. One report said that there's 3,300 of these No Kings rally that took place on Saturday, March the 28th of 2026. They said that over 3,000 events across 50 states to protest President Trump's policies and perceived expansions in executive powers, organizers said. The movement gained momentum following January 2026 after the fatal shooting of Renee Good. Now remember, Renee Good was the protester, the hired protester that was out protesting ICE. She took her car and tried to ram it into the ICE agents, trying to harm them, hurt them, kill them, whatever. And she did that, and the legacy media stepped in and said, oh no, she was just a mom trying to get to school. Remember that? Well, you know, they had a rally in June and October of 2025, and they tried to explain to us the millions of people that turned out for this. And if you'll remember, then we took on social media and started taking apart and figured out that many of the photos of the thousands of people that was gathered was not even correct. They were old photos from years past at other rallies and other political rallies that they did. So I just have to tell you that I don't believe legacy media. I just don't believe them. I've often told you, if you're watching and listening to legacy media, reading the newspapers and all, folks, they're poisoning your mind, and you need to pay better attention and do some research yourself. Now, according to organizers, and I want you to remember that line, please remember that. According to organizers, with participants demonstrating against what they characterized as authoritarian overreach by the Trump administration. They had nearly 3,300 events were scheduled across the country, and then they reported that nearly 40 events were held internationally. Now, they are talking about this No Kings rally is because they're trying to say that Donald Trump is a dictator. Many of them go on out and say he is an evil dictator. Well, let me remind you what an evil dictator truly looks like. Just as a reminder, remember Barack Hussein Obama? I often say America's biggest mistake. Well, he was such a dictator that he said, get insurance or pay the fine. This was the mandate that came along with what they called the Affordable Care Act, and the Democrats loved it so well they started calling it Obamacare. Until after a few years, it started tanking and costing us millions upon millions of dollars, which we said we know it will. And once we were proven right, they quit calling it Obamacare and started calling it the Affordable Care Act. So there's your evil dictator. Where were all of these protesters when all of that was going on? Let me show you another evil dictator. Remember Sleepy Joe Biden, also known as Otto Penn, aka Hussein's third term in office? He was such an evil dictator that he said, get the vaccine during the Pelosi plague. He said, get the vaccine or lose your job. He wanted and tried to do a federal mandate that every one of us had to get. I'm happy to say I didn't get it. Thank God. Now it's costing lives. Millions of people have died during this. Well, not to get off on that subject, but just to simply say, you want to take a look at some evil dictators? Well, there's two of them right there. But they want to say that President Donald Trump is the dictator. No King's Rally. And people go out and act like a fool. But these are the dictators that have turned Americans against one another. Remember back in 2020 when the scamdemic during the Pelosi plague was going on? That she and Bill Gates and Fauci, they all brought to America from China? Remember during that time? They turned Americans against one another with such hatred and disdain that there would be neighbors that would be calling the police and saying, my neighbor's having a party. There's more than just a couple of people out there. And they're not social distancing. They're not wearing masks. They're actually having fun in America. Oh my God. Remember that time? Remember when a governor up north said, hey, you can't plant. You cannot plant a garden in your backyard. During the Pelosi plague, during the scamdemic, I couldn't even grow my own vegetables up there. And you want to call Donald Trump an evil dictator? Why are they calling him a dictator? Because he is finally enforcing the laws, the immigration laws, and has ICE cleaning up the country from all of these people that are here illegally, and they're evil, and they're part of gangs, and they're killers, they're rapists, they're child molesters. They're wanted in their own country. They're evil people. And he's trying to clean them up, and yet the left is so crazy, they want to call him a dictator? Seriously? Now, they want to say that Trump is a dictator, but this comes from the party that wants to dictate our morality. This comes from the party that wants to say, this is the party that says they want to decide if a baby should live or die. The evil party that will even go so far as to say that even, some of them, even after birth, we ought to be able to slit the throats of these poor children. This is the party, the Democrat Communist Party, that wants to talk about how much money you should earn. Hey, let me tell you something. New York, you have an evil dictator right now. You put him in office because you wouldn't go out and vote properly. You wouldn't go out there and vote, and a small majority of your population elected him as your mayor. Now you have an evil dictator, and guess what? Now communism is on the fast track in New York, and he's wanting to tell you how much money you can earn and how you're going to spend it. They want to talk to you and dictate to you what energy source you should use. I mean, my gosh. The people of Texas, and different places. The evil regime is saying, hey, we don't have a big enough power grid, so you have to shut your air conditioner off during these times, or you have to run it at 80 degrees. My God, why have an air conditioner? These are the evil dictators, the party, the Democrat, the communist, that are the dictators, but they're wanting to convince you that Donald Trump is the dictator. And yet they're trying to dictate to you and tell you exactly what you can do. They even want to go so far as to tell you what you can say. Oh my God, folks, political correctness has ruined our country, ruined our world. You can't use certain terms. You can't use certain words. Why? Oh, because you're going to trigger someone. Good God, I am so sick and tired of people being triggered. I'll tell you what triggers me is that America's going down the tubes, and Americans would rather stick their head in the sand and pay no attention whatsoever than to get up and fight for our country. The evil dictators of the Democrat Communist Party, they want to tell you what you can do with your kids, let me rephrase that. They want to tell you what your kids can do without your permission. Oh, remember Hillary Clinton? It takes a village. No, it doesn't. It doesn't take a village. It takes a good mom and a dad to raise a child. Maybe a good grandma or a good papa. That's what it takes to raise a child. But these evil dictators want to go behind your back. You send your kids to school thinking that they are safe. That's laughable, folks. If you think your kid is safe at school, you are so wrong. You are so wrong. I mean, our schools, high schools, junior high, now even elementary, oh my God, they're full of Karens. They're full of these crazy people that are brainwashing your children, doing anti-ICE demonstrations, having your children make signs, teaching them that you're a boy, but you can be a girl. You can identify as that. We've got in the state of Missouri, one school district allowed a girl who identifies as a cat to actually have a litter box. My thought to that is okay, you've got a litter box. Now here's what I'm going to tell you. You don't get any toilet paper. I've never seen a cat use toilet paper to clean themselves. I say lick your own butt. You want to be a cat? Act like one. But you're not going to get the luxuries of a human being when you want them. I mean, we've gone crazy. And yet, the liberal Democrat Communist Party is trying to dictate to you and your children. You know, there are people that are fighting for children's rights, that the government is taking away the parental rights and the kids are winning. Take a look at some of the cases in California. They've gone absolutely crazy. But again, I'm kind of going off topic, but I'm trying to prove a point. Donald Trump is not the dictator, folks. These communists are. The same people that say that Trump is the dictator want to tell you how we're going to refer to what a person identifies as. I remember Kami Lala in one of her first staff meetings started sitting there saying, these are my pronouns, yak, yak, yak. Oh my God. Insanity in the White House. And people bought into it. You know, I was filling out some paperwork online, of course, for one of my doctors. And a couple of them have pronouns in there. I just simply wrote in there, pissed off papa, daring them, begging them to ask, hey, is this your pronoun? Yeah, I want to be known as pissed off papa. Why? Because I'm pissed off at you. for the insanity of having this on a form. And people wonder why I don't honor or respect or believe medical science most of the time. Nah, they're nuts. Well, one last thing is that the Trump haters, the Democrat Communist Party, they want to dictate to you who can own a gun. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't own a gun that has ever killed anybody. I don't possess a gun that's ever killed anyone. And no one has ever been killed by a gun. They have been killed by the person holding the gun, the human being. You see, they say you can't dictate morality. Well, guess what? The liberal communists want to all the time. They sure do. Now, I got to say that in some cities, the organizers, and there's that word again, I want you to remember that because I'm going to end with something for you on that. They put the estimate above officials' estimates. For example, they say that the turnout in Minnesota was 200,000 people, whereas local officials estimated 100,000. So do you believe this 8 million thing? No, I don't. They tried it the first two times. In June and October of 2025, they inflated their numbers, showed pictures of crowds outdoors, and then we found out they weren't true. So do I believe them? Oh, absolutely not. So then we go into another headline reads that they want you to believe, legacy media is asking you to believe this. They want you to believe that the sustained nationwide turnout signals a shifting political dynamics with organizers asserting that grassroots engagement increases pressure on lawmakers as midterm elections loom later this year. Well, folks, they're trying to tell you what to believe there. They're inflating all of this. Remember, the Communist Party controls legacy media. They're controlling what is put on the radio. They're controlling what is put on TV. It's all propaganda. They're controlling what is put in print in many of our newspapers. You're hard-pressed to find a media outlet that's going to give you the truth. That's why I constantly tell you, you've got to figure out who you can believe and then start listening to podcasts, start listening to YouTube channels, people that you know. Man, these are people right on. Because I'm telling you, you know how legacy media, you know how they're lying to you? Turn them on. They're lying to you. I promise you. So they're trying to say that the turnout, if it's confirmed, would make these protests the second largest in U.S. history. Well, if it is confirmed. But how do we do that? Well, we have to research all the YouTubers, all of the podcasters, all of the people, the bigger people that have staffs unlike I do. They're the ones that we have to listen to. So they say that these things they're trying to tell you that they're organic. They're trying to tell you that liberals are building momentum, that people are turning against Trump. So here's what they do. In Minnesota, they had headliners like Jane Fonda and Bruce Springsteen. So they came in and he wanted to protest. He sung this song, Streets of Minneapolis, in protest of the federal immigration crackdown. So the evil dictators, not Donald Trump, but the Democrat Communist Party, want to have a no kings rally because they don't want all of these dictators, but yet they're the ones that want to come out and protest. Why? Because Donald Trump is finally, He's the only president in decades that has guts enough to enforce our laws. Ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you that if our laws are not adhered to, if our laws are not enforced, we're going to have complete chaos in our country, and our country will go down. I promise you. Well, not only did they bring in a couple of celebrities, but then I see where headlines read, "The professors joined the masses for the No Kings protest." Here's a professor, Richard Stilson, a psychologist who teaches human sexuality at Trinity College, said to one of the reporters, "The queer community has suffered due to the Trump administration's policies blocking sex change surgeries on minors and trans athletes in women's sports, as well as preventing sex changes on passports." Well, thank God for Donald Trump, because he's finally, someone has guts enough that is actually standing up against these things. He goes on to say, this Richard guy goes on to say, people are petrified, afraid to travel, afraid to come out of their cocoons, out of their places where they're feeling the safest, just because they don't know how they'll be received and what repercussions they'll be. Guess what, folks? Look at my ball cap. Those of you that are on my video channels, look at my ball cap. What does it say? Golden Age of America. Do you know that I won't even wear this cap out in public? Not because I'm afraid, because I'm afraid of what I'll have to do to protect myself. I wouldn't wear it in a restaurant. I'm afraid they'll spit in my food. They'll do something even worse. They'll poison my food. These liberals are nuts. If you think that I'm wrong, well, drop me a line in the comment sections. Tell me how wrong I really am. Send me an email. I put my email on my video screens. It's LarryB@Larry'sRRR.com. Here's an assistant professor for women's and gender studies in Indiana University, South Bend, Daryl Heller, called the racism and override white supremacy of this administration profound. Not one thing has Donald Trump done that is racist. You see, these are all lies that the left and the left media keep pushing and shoving at you until finally you will begin to believe it. You tell a lie long enough, even you'll believe it. Tell the lie long enough, loud enough, and strong enough, and others will begin to believe it. It's called propaganda. That's what they have going for them. Here's another professor that political philosophy and constitutional studies at the University of Montana Western spoke to a crowd as a concerned citizen arguing for power to the people. He says, we were the first state to influence our money and Congress by sending a lady to Congress. Well, folks, I got to tell you, America's in sad, sad shape. It truly is in sad shape. Well, I'm really at a loss of words at this moment. I really am. I've got to move on, but I'm at a loss of words. Let me just back up. I told you earlier that if you thought your kids were safe going to high school, junior high, even elementary, you were so wrong. Let me tell you something. One of the most dangerous places that you can send one of your children to is to college. to a university. They're full of liberals, full of anti-Trump, full of anti-American communists who want to destroy your children's minds. You think you're sending them there for an education? You're sending them there to get their brains washed. Liberalism in those colleges is unbelievable. So remember, and I'm going to wrap this up, but I want you to remember, I kept asking you to remember the organizations earlier. 2 different times I said the organizations, the organizers. Well, here's why. Because here's what I'm going to tell you. Crowds on demand is a real thing. You see, there's a network, about 500 organizations with an annual revenue of approximately $3 billion, that's with a B, to tell these protests are grassroots and organic. These signs that people, they see them, we see them getting bussed in, we see them coming, they get their signs passed out. It's a well-oiled machine. And yet they think that you're dumb enough, and many Americans are, to believe that all of this is grassroots. It's all organic, but it's not. Ladies and gentlemen, don't buy their lies. Because here's what I'm going to tell you. These organizers are a well-oiled machine, and it is a multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar industry. There are companies in the U.S. that advertise crowd building, grassroots organizing, or event turnout services. You can go and search it for yourself. One of them, one of the more popular ones, probably the best well-known, is Crowds on Demand. They're out of California. You want a big crowd? If you're willing to pay the money, they can get you the crowd. Another one is Demand Protest. It is organized by Demand Protest LLC. These are paid protesters. If there was 8 million people on the No Kings Day, that was not organic. It was paid protesters. Don't buy into the lies. And here's what the most embarrassing thing to me is. You take a look at these protesters at No Kings rallies, and what are they made up of? A lot of them are made up of my generation. In August, I'm going to turn 67. And my generation that used to believe in America, that was patriotic, that has picked up rifles and ammunition and all kinds of weaponry and fought for our great country, that got out and voted, that believed in America, believed in God. It's now my generation that is backslid to the point to where we will no longer defend our country. We're no longer patriotic. And for a few bucks, we'll join one of these companies and become a paid protester. YouTubers and different people will go out on the streets and say, hey, why are you here? What are you protesting? Oh, I don't know. They gave me this sign. I'm just walking around with a sign. Oh my God. Is my generation, are these paid protesters hurting for so much money that they're willing to sell their souls to Satan and do this kind of a thing? Apparently they are. Another group, here is Berman Group, Berman and Company out of DC. They're a lobbying PR firm known for organizing advocacy campaigns. Well, folks, let me start wrapping this up, but let me possibly introduce you to a new term. This is a new term even to me. It's called astroturfing. Astroturfing. Probably won't find it on legacy media, but go out and start searching through AI, go out and start looking on X, you're probably going to find this terminology, astroturfing. This is the real concept that people are usually referring to when they are organized campaigns that are made to look like grassroots movements. You know, I saw an issue that happened here in Little Rock, and it was with a restaurant. In fact, I did a podcast on it. It was about the restaurant that kicked out our governor, Sarah Sanders, and they kicked her out and everything. And within days, somebody had put a picture up there of probably 100 people trying to stand in line getting into this restaurant. And you got to looking at it and you figured out it was all AI. It was chopped up, pasted, chopped up, pasted. AI did that. I can tell you, there are things that you can see that look so real. You'll be fooled. And you'll be fooled by this astroturfing. You'll be fooled by these crowds on demand protesters if you allow yourself to be. Don't be ignorant. Don't be ignorant. You can change ignorance. Go and begin to figure out what's true, what's real, and what's believable. Well, I will tell you this. It is not too late for you to ask yourself, why would someone do this? And does it even make sense? I have no idea why people would do a paid protest. Do they need the money that bad? But you need to ask yourself this question. Why would they even do it? And why would it make sense? It's time that you realize that you need to read past the headline and investigate the details for yourself. What might really be frustrating to you when you begin to do your own research is you'll begin to ask yourself, where did they get this headline for this article or for this soundbite? You see, I've done enough commercials and enough things on the air for even TV, for my restaurant and different issues, that I know how to talk in sound bites. You don't get on there and just talk like you're doing a 30 or 45 minute podcast. If you want on the news, if there's 20 or 30 people that they're interviewing, go on there and give them a half a dozen sound bites. Because other people will get on there and ramble. They're looking for sound bites. They're looking for something that's going to drive their viewership. Legacy media cannot be trusted. I've told you so many times that if you're listening to legacy media, they're poisoning your mind. Legacy media wants you to believe 8 million people hate Trump and showed up at a rally organically. It could be true, but I doubt it is. I know that there were over 80 million of people, of we the people, that stood up and said, we want what Trump is doing. But now legacy media is saying, they want you to believe that conservatives are turning on Trump. No, we're not. I love everything he's doing. I love it. I love it. I love what he's doing. Legacy media wants you to believe that MAGA is falling apart and turning on Trump and it's about to end. That's what they want you to believe. But ladies and gentlemen, it's not true. MAGA is not turning on President Donald Trump. MAGA has turned on the Republican Party because we know there's so little difference between the Republican Party and the liberal communist Democrats. You can't hardly tell them apart. You can't tell them apart. We're not turning on Donald Trump. We're turning on the Republican Party. My question is, isn't it time for you to begin to think and think for yourself and stop allowing the communist legacy media from controlling your mind and your life? Here's what I got to tell you, folks. It's time for you to get out, do your own research, and figure out what's true and what's not. I will tell you this, that if the Republican Party was still the Republican Party of years ago, with this president and with this vice president, we would be light years ahead. But instead, all we have is some Democrats that came into our party. We call them rhinos, the Republicans in name only, and they're fighting Trump every step of the way. That's true. But these No King rallies, don't be shook by them. Don't buy into them. I don't believe half, a quarter. I don't believe hardly any of it. Folks, I hope that you will tell others about our channels. Follow us on our podcast channels. Follow us on our video channels. We got video that we show on YouTube, Rumble, and Spotify. Please follow us. Tell your friends, tell your family about us. And I hope that you will have a great day.